This tutorial is going to cover how to make interactive UIs. And today, to showcase this, I'm going to make a phone device UI that allows players to teleport between different locations that they choose. So let's go ahead and get started. Also, you can find all the code that's used in this video in the description below. The first thing I'm going to do is add a new verse file to the project. I'm just going to call this phone device. Hit create. Now I'm going to open this up. In here, the very first thing that we're going to need is a remote manager device so that we can actually activate the phone whenever a player presses something. So let's make a new editable called a remote manager. And it's going to be of type remote manager device equal to just the same thing. I forgot the name is actually signal remote manager device. So fix that. Now at the start of the game, we'll say remote manager dot primary signal event dot subscribe. So we're going to subscribe to remote open. And then we're going to make a function called remote open. It's going to take an agent because whenever the remote is pressed, if we look here on this event, it sends an agent or it listens for an agent. So we'll say that it receives an agent and we're going to call that agent just so we can keep track of what it is. And in this function, I'm going to, for now, just say block. But in this, we need to make it so that it'll open up the phone UI. So let's go ahead and make that. Before I do this, I'm now just going to minimize this and make the UI in a widget first. So it'll be easier to explain it and later transfer over all the values that we need. So I'm just going to call this test phone widget and open this up. Okay, with this open, the first thing I'm going to do is just drag on a canvas panel. And then first we need a phone background. So I'll just make, for now, we'll make this, change the actual image to a black texture. And then I'm going to change the anchors to center. I'm going to change the alignment so that it's centered. And then the X and Y to 0. Now it's directly in the middle of my screen. I'm actually going to make this a little bit bigger. And that's a beautiful phone. Here, obviously, you'd want to put your own texture if you wanted to make this, but a black image works for now. And then we're going to need our actual buttons that we're going to interact with. So I'm just going to drag on some button quiets here. And in this, I'm going to do the same thing. Change the anchors and the alignment to center. And then I'm just going to position this where I actually want it to be. So we're just going to make it pretty basic. We'll have 3 different buttons to interact with. I'll Control-C, Control-V to copy it. Do that twice more. And then we'll have, let's do a button loud, just to switch it up for the exit button. Same thing though, anchors and alignment. I'm just gonna, maybe down here at the bottom, we'll say exit. I would like to put it over here, but you need to be careful when you're making UIs. Controller players cannot switch between buttons that aren't directly in a line. So if it's not completely vertical or horizontal, then they wouldn't be able to switch to it. So for example, if it was over here, they could switch between these 3, but they wouldn't be able to go to the exit button. So I'm going to make sure that's aligned. With that done, I'm just going to hit compile. And close out of this for now. Or actually, I'm just going to minimize it instead. And zoom out a bit. I did not mean to do that. There we go. And let's just minimize that. And now, if I go back to our code, so what we need to actually do is make all of those parts in the widget. normally you would think to add it here. So for example, we'd say var, teleport button 1 of type button quiet is equal to button quiet. It's going to give me an error here. And that's because I need to use this directory. And boom. You would think to use this here. The issue is that if you want to have a multiplayer game, if we add this button to multiple different players, they can't all share the exact same button. We need to make multiple different sets of buttons for each player. So to do this, what we're going to do is make a custom class, and I'm just going to name it phone of type class nothing, and there we go, just like that. In this class, we're going to make all of the parts that we need. So the first is just going to be our teleport button 1. We'll copy this 2 more times for the other 2 buttons. And then we're going to make a exit button, type button loud equal to button loud. And then we need, if we go back to our widget, we also need the canvas as well as the image. So let's add both of those. Our canvas is just going to be, let's say, main canvas of type canvas is equal to canvas. Might get another error because we need to use this directory. And then our very last UI element is going to be our texture. So it's going to be a phone image type texture block is equal to texture block. But here we're going to get an error. That's because if you're trying to define a texture block or a block of an image, we need a default image. So instead, if you wanted to do that, for example, I'll actually say default image is set or is equal to, and then you put your image name here. But because I don't have an image for this and I'm using a color, it's pretty much the exact same thing, except I'm just going to change this to a color block. Change this to color block. And then instead of default image, I'm just going to default color is equal to black. Gonna get another error here because I need to use this directory. There's a lot of directories that you need to include, but as a rule of thumb, just add in the code that you need and then add the directories as you go. That's the easiest way to do it. Now we need to make a function in this phone device that'll actually add it to the player and set up this UI. So what we're going to do is say add UI, and it's going to take an agent of type agent because we want to actually be able to add this to the player. It's not going to return anything, so we'll say void. And then here I'm going to say if player is equal to player agent. So what this does is converts the agent to a player. And then the reason we're doing this is so that we can do player UI is equal to get player UI player. So what this does is it gets the player and then it gets the UI of that player. And now that we have the UI, we can say player UI dot add widget main canvas. And just like that, it's going to add the main canvas. The issue is that our main canvas doesn't actually have anything in it. So what we're going to do is first make a function that's going to combine all of our UI elements and add it to the main canvas. So we'll make a function here called create UI. It does not need to receive anything, and see, this is going to return something, so we don't need to make this void. We're instead going to make this a canvas, so that whenever we call this function, it's going to return the canvas. So now we need to actually name a canvas. So we'll say new UI is equal to, or no, we'll say new UI of type canvas is equal to canvas. And then in this canvas, we'll say slots of type array, and then canvas slot. And then we need to have all of our basic information for our canvas slot. So here now, we'll say that our first canvas slot, let's go back to our widget. Our first canvas slot will do the image. So in this image, our anchors are in the center. So that's 0.5 and then 0.5. Let's go ahead and add that. So our anchors are equal to anchors, where our minimum is equal to vector 2, where x is equal to 0.5, y is equal to 0.5. And then we also need to define our maximum, which is equal to vector 2, x is equal to 0.5, y is equal to 0.5. Our minimum and maximum are just going to be the same thing here. Our next slot is going to be our offsets, which is going to be equal to a margin, where our left value, let's go ahead and get these. So I'll open up this widget, and you'll see our position X and position Y, because it's in the center, both of these are going to just be 0. So we'll say left is equal to 0.0, and then top is also equal to 0.0. Our next two values are going to be the right, which if we go back, our right value is 640, which is going to be the size, and our bottom value is going to be 800, which can be the size Y. So our right value is 640, and then our bottom value is going to be 800. Right now, we still have a lot of errors, so let's just keep going and add in more. Our alignment, which is a vector 2. Here we'll say our x is equal to 0.5, and our y is equal to 0.5. This would be equal to our alignment right here. And then moving on, we can add our z order, which will be like the layer that it's on. So we'll say z order is equal to 0. And then lastly, our widget is going to be our phone image. You see we get some errors here. This is because anchor is not a property of canvas slot, but anchors is. So need to fix that. And then we have the same issue here, and that's because I spelled alignment wrong, and it needs to be 1L. Now we get some errors here, but that's just because we're missing the spatial map directory, and boom. Now we have our first canvas slot done. What's great is now we can copy this to make our other canvas slots. So let's copy this, change our widget to teleport button 1. And then let's change the positions and the scale. So I'm going to go back and click here, and we'll see position X. I'm just going to change, make sure that's 0. So our position Y is -150, size X is 330, size Y is 120. So I'll go back and say position X was 0, position Y is -150. Our size was 330 for size X, and our size bottom was 120. The alignment and the anchors were the same, except I'm going to change the Z order to 1 so that this is actually on top of our background image. Now I'm going to copy this 2 more times for the other 2 buttons, and highlight all this, press Shift Tab to align them all. This is going to be teleport button 2, and this one's going to be teleport button 3. Now, if I go back to my widget, we'll see this one. Everything's going to be the same except for the position Y. So what I like to do is kind of fix it. So you can see the position Y, it's about a 150 difference. So instead of getting the exact value here, it's easier to make it better aligned if I just change these values using math. So if I add 150 to this, that'll be 0. And then if I add 150 again, the last button will be 150. We're not done yet though. We also need an exit button. So let's add one last final slot. Add the widget as our exit button. And then I'm just going to add another 150 to this. So I'm just going to change this to 300. So now we actually have a function that's going to create our UI, but it's still not setting this main canvas using this function yet. So we need to, before we add the widget here, we're going to say set main canvas is equal to create UI. So what this will do is whenever we add the UI to the player, it's going to set our canvas equal to all of this, and then it's going to add the widget. So the last thing that we need to do is actually go down, and whenever this is pressed, we need to call this. So what we'll do is say, we're going to make a new version. I could make this here and say var phone, or phone1 of type phone is equal to phone. But again, this will only make one phone per device. So multiple players can't have UIs at the same time. Instead, is what we'll do is add this or create a new phone every single time a player presses the button. So instead, I'm not going to call this phone 1. I'm going to say new phone. And then now that I've created this new phone, I'm going to say new phone dot all the function that we created called add UI. And this function receives an agent. So I'm going to send it the agent that we received whenever the remote got pressed. So what we have now is whenever a player presses the button, a new phone is going to get created, and then it's going to call this add UI function in the phone. And this function is going to get the player's UI, set up our canvas, and then add that canvas to the player. One more thing before we test it is I forgot to add, make sure to add size to content. Set this equal to false. This will make it so that our widgets will be the size that we defined using our right and bottom values rather than their default size. So let's go ahead and test this in game. To do that, I'm just going to go into our UEFN, hit verse, build verse code, and then drag on this phone device. And in this device, we have a remote manager that we need. So I'm going to just search for a remote manager. Drag this on. I'm going to change the rarity to legendary. And that's all we need to do. And then I can select this here. But we also need a way for the player to get the actual remote. So I'm going to just get an item granter, drag it on. Add an item here. So I'm just gonna add a remote, add the legendary remote, and then I'm going to say grant on game start. And I'm also going to change the receiving players to all. So now I'm going to launch session and test this out. Now in game, if I press the remote, we'll see we have our beautiful phone UI, but there's a lot of problems. So let's go ahead and fix them. The first thing we need is to actually be able to interact with this and be able to close the menu. So let's go and fix them. I'm going to end the game and open my code again. So in here, so whenever the UI is being created, we are also just going to set the text for all of the buttons. So here I'll say teleport button 1 dot set text, and I'm going to set it to teleport 1. And you'll see we have an error. The reason for this is because we are trying to send it a string, and it needs to be of type message. So we need to make a function that takes a string and converts it to a message. I'm going to actually just take a shortcut and do this. How I did this is I type message and press tab. This is from a verse extension that I use called verse language snippets. You can add this by just going to extensions and then searching for a verse, and it'll be one of the first ones. It pretty much adds a bunch of really helpful little commands that you can do to just save you time. So now I have this function, and it receives a string and returns it as a message. So what I'll do is add this function here, and inside of it I'll add my string. So now this is going to convert this to a message, and now we can actually set the text to it. So let's do this for our other buttons. Say teleport button 2 and 3, and then change the text. And then our last one, we actually want to change our exit button to exit. But our next problem is that we couldn't press these buttons and that they weren't doing anything. So to make it so we can press these buttons, we need to, whenever we add the widget, we need to make it so the player can now input in the widget. And we do this by saying player underscore UI slot. And then we're going to define the input mode, which is going to be UI input mode dot all. Doing this will allow it, whenever we add this widget, it'll allow the player to select buttons on the screen. So let's go ahead and really quick check and make sure all that's working fine. It's always good to constantly check while you're doing mechanics so that if you do end up having an issue, it's a lot easier to find out what that issue was if there's only a couple things that it could be. So in the game, if I press this, wow, our buttons are named and I can press them, but they still don't do anything. So let's fix that. So back in our code, we actually need to make these buttons do things. So what I'm going to do is here in my create UI function, I'm just going to say, you could also do this in the add UI button, doesn't really matter. But here, first I'm just going to do the exit button. So we'll say exit button dot on click dot subscribe, and then we'll say handle exit. Now we actually need to make a function called handle exit that'll happen whenever we press that button. So handle exit, and in this you would normally think you just put an agent, because whenever a button is pressed, it'll send the agent. But whenever you're working with UI buttons, it's actually different. If we go here, instead of listening for an agent, it listens for a widget message. So I'm just going to copy that, and instead of agent, we'll say message of type widget message. And then this isn't going to return anything, so I'm just going to say of type void. And for now, I'll just say block. In this message, let's go check. So for every widget message, we have a player and a source. So if I go, we need to get the player. So I'll say our player is equal to the name of our widget message, which is going to be message, and then the player in that widget message. So message.player. Now that we have our player, we can do what we did here and get the player UI. So I'm going to say if, and then player UI is equal to get the player UI. Instead, though, of creating our main canvas and adding the widget, we're just going to say player UI dot remove widget, and then we want to remove our main canvas, which was added. And boom, let's test that out. So in game, press the button, boom. These still don't do anything, but our exit button, it will exit it out. You can open it and exit it. Nice. Now let's make it so our teleport buttons actually do something. So we end game and go back. We have our exit button on click. So we'll say we'll copy that and instead change it to teleport button, and we don't want it to exit. We instead want it to teleport player or teleport one player. Let's go ahead and add this now. So we'll make a new function, and I'm just going to add it here. Call it teleport one player. It's going to take the same thing as our exit button because it's a widget button. And then type void. And we want it to teleport the player. So the first thing we're going to need to do is get the player to press the button. And then now we want it to teleport. So let's just go ahead and add a teleporter to this class, right? Say teleporter one of type teleporter device is equal to teleporter device. That easy, right? Well, it'll allow us to do this if I go here and hit verse build verse code and look at my device. Let me just add that teleporter. Oh wait, I can't, because the teleporter is not part of our actual creative device. So what we're going to do is add our teleporter here instead in our actual creative device. And whenever we originally set up our phone, we are going to make our teleporter 1 equal to the teleporter 1 in this device. So now, I'm also, because this does not need to be editable, I'm just going to make this a variable instead. So now whenever our player, or whenever we create a new phone to add to the player, the teleporter in that phone is going to be equal to the teleporter that we define in our device. So if I hit verse build verse code, now you'll see we have a teleporter which we can select, but it doesn't do anything yet. So let's first add that. Whenever this button is pressed, we'll say teleport r1 dot teleport and then player. So let's just do this 2 more times for our other 2 teleporters. Just make 2 more functions real quick. We'll teleport 2 player and teleport 3 player. We need different teleporters for all 3. Teleporter 1, 2, and 3. And then change them here in the respective functions. And then we need to make the buttons actually call the right functions. So we'll say button 2 and 3 on click, and they'll call function teleport 2 and 3. Just like that. We are almost done. We actually still need to add the other editable teleporters. And then we need to set them equal to the teleporters whenever we set up the phone. So I'll say comma, teleporter 2 is equal to teleporter 2, and then just copy it for the last one. 33. And now let's go ahead and test this. So if I had verse build verse code, we need some teleporters. So let's get those. Let's drag 3. I'll put 1 over on the left side over here, another over on the right side, and then the third one I'm going to put high up in the air. So teleporter 1. I'm going to just change, actually, let's select all 3 of these so that we don't have to copy the settings over and over again. I'm going to disable the visibility of these, and then I'm going to change both groups here to none because we're using verse to teleport them and we're not connecting to. And that's all I need to do for now. I just need to select these in our device, and then let's go ahead and push changes. So now in game, let's go ahead and press this. Now if I go teleport 1, I get teleported. I can exit it out. Now I'm on the left. try again. Teleport 2. Boom, I'm on the right. And teleport 3, I'm in the air. So I can just kind of span these if I wanted to. So now there's a couple more things that I want to add. So the first is, if, for example, you want this to close the player's UI, you would just copy this here, how we handle the exit. And whenever a player gets teleported, we'll just add in all 3 functions so that after they get teleported, it closes the UI. Another thing that we're going to do is, if let's say you're using this for a tycoon and you want to use the phone to teleport the player back to their plot, but if every phone is going to teleport to the same teleporter, then you have an issue. So what we're going to do is, let's say teleporter 3 is going to teleport the player back to their plot, right? Instead of a singular device, we're going to make this an array by adding this. So it's teleporter 3 of type array of teleporter device. Instead of setting it equal to 1, we'll set it equal to an array. And we're going to do the same thing down here in our editable. And boom. So now we actually have our array of teleporter devices, and it'll set it equal to our array in our phone. But the issue is you can't teleport from a whole array, or you can't teleport a full array. So what we'll do is say, for every single teleporter in the full teleporter array, we are going to teleport the player. So what this does is goes through every single teleporter in our array or group of teleporters, and it teleports the player using it. And then what you can do is set it up. So if I go back in game, and instead this is our teleporter 3. So I will make a few. So let's say these are different plots. You can actually just change the teams on these. So selected team, this will just be team index 1. So you would want this in front of your plot team. This one, team index 2, and so on. That way, whenever a player presses teleporter 3, it'll try to teleport using all of the different teleporters, but only the one for the player's specific team will actually work. And now if I go back in here, we'll see, let's build verse code real quick. And in our device, instead for teleporter 3, we have an array. So you just have to add all of these teleporters that we made. Right now, I don't have it set up so that I'm on a specific team. So let's do that. Let's get 2 class selectors out. And then select them both, or select the first one, select team to switch to, and this will be team 1. The next one will be team to switch to 2. And then let's actually just make those teams real quick by getting into team settings devices, doing the same thing. This will be team 1. This one will be team 2. Then in these devices, I'm also going to change it so that it will not remove my remote. Because I'm only testing the first 2 teleporters, I'm going to remove this one from the array. Just delete them. And then I'm also going to move these teleporters so that my teleporter 1 is over on the left side. And then my teleporter 2, or teleporter for team 2, is over on the right side, so they're corresponding to their class selectors. And then last, I need to make it so it's actually a team game mode, and set this to 1. Yeah, that's fine. So now if I go ahead and push changes, so now in game, if I go teleporter 1, I'm already team 1, so let's press this and click teleport 3. Now I'm over here, and it automatically closes for me. If now I switch to team 2, press the remote, teleport team 3, now I'm over here. Alright, that pretty much covers it for actually making interactive UIs that can do different things. Next week, I plan to make a tutorial on how to make animated UIs using only Verse, which I haven't seen done before at least. So make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss it. Also check out Map Academy. Bye.